We're on.
All right, it is July 9th, 2020. Welcome to the third podcast of Legacy Battle. We want to thank everyone who's been watching. If you haven't, you should. It's available on the Legacy Battle group page. Please join. All the videos are in the archive section. If you want to know more about our panelists, go back, watch the first show, which was the Dream Team versus the Redeem Team. Our next show will be August 6th. And it's going to be, should Major League Baseball put steroid players into the Hall of Fame? So we hope you'll all come check that one out. Our trivia question, we're going to jump into it right away tonight. I know we waited almost till the end last time, but we're going to do it right away tonight. So since we're doing a baseball debate on August 6th, our trivia question is baseball related. It is a three-part question, so you got to get all three parts right. Put it in the comments. If nobody gets it, we'll put it on the group page. Before joining the Cleveland Indians, the Wild Thing Ricky Vaughn pitched in what league? What jersey number did he wear with Cleveland? And what major league record did he set? So if you didn't get all that, you can watch the recorded version later on. All right, so as we said, this is our third show. We've had different debate each time. Our first one was a moderated debate. Last one was Lincoln Douglas style debate. Tonight is an open debate. Next month we're doing a team debate. So we do try to change things up. And tonight's debate, as everybody knows, is Wayne Gretzky versus Mario Lemieux. We are going to start right now. Well, some dog is barking at somebody's house, right? That'd be Kevin. All right, so we're going to start. As it's an open debate, so there's no rules. Everyone just kind of talks and puts their facts out there, and we combat at one another. So let's just start on the ice right off the bat. Brett, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you feel the better player was on the ice and why?
Well, again, we're debating two of the greatest athletes in almost any sport, you could argue, of all time, and then specifically with hockey. And I'm sure we're going to get into a lot of stats and things like that, but something I found that really stood out to me regarding you talking about Wayne Gretzky. Wayne Gretzky, and it's a stat, but it says that he notched around 44% more points than the person who's closest behind them, which is now Jaromir Jagr. And what that says is if you look at the other major sports, and just looking at this real quick, like if you're talking about baseball, that would mean that person would have to have hit 335 more home runs than Barry Bonds, who sits at 762. Or you look at in the NFL, a quarterback would have had to pass for around 31,000 more yards than Brett Favre's 71,800 in order to achieve the same type of greatness in that sport. And you could go in some of the other ones, but I'll start off with that. I mean, Gretzky was really a man amongst boys when he entered the league, starting his rookie year.
That's true. Brian, I see you got Wayne Gretzky hockey on there behind you, going old school. What do you think about what he just said?
Well, I mean, when I think about Wayne Gretzky, I think about, okay, you got the skinny 180-pound 6-foot tall guy. I mean, physically he was, just about everybody was bigger than him, and yet it was his intelligence, just his complete hockey IQ of always being able to be in the right position at the right time, being able to read what was going on. That just is what elevated him so much higher than just about everybody else. I mean, you can get into all the other great things, but I think if you really just boil it down to one thing, that's really what it was. It was just his intelligence. And so, I mean, we can get into we could talk about what might have been with Mario Lemieux with the injuries, and I'm sure we'll get to that later. But what was with Wayne Gretzky was just greatness. And when you look at the numbers, you look at the trophies, you look at all of the accomplishments. Really, he's just as Brett said, just a man among boys.
I agree. He was the smartest player to ever play the game, and you mentioned being where the puck is. That was one of his famous quotes, is that he would not go to the puck. He would go to where the puck was going to be.
Right,
And
right.
that always put him ahead of the play. Kevin, what are your thoughts on what they had to say?
I mean, obviously it's Wayne Gretzky, the great one. He got that nickname for a reason. If you look at stats, overall stats, I mean, of course, he's the GOAT. I mean, he's the Tom Brady of the NHL. He's the Tiger Woods of the NHL. And just like you guys had mentioned, like his offensive awareness was obviously above anybody. I mean, he put up almost 3,000 points in his career. And that's insane. You know, hockey seasons are half of the amount of what baseball seasons are, and people get 3,000 hits in baseball seasons, and he almost got 3,000 points in a shorter amount of time. Clearly, I mean, he, like you said, he knew where to be. He knew where the puck was going to be. You know, he was sent to Los Angeles. Los Angeles brought him in to basically save hockey in the Pacific, and he did that single-handedly. And look at the Kings. I mean, they've won cups since him, and they're thriving over there. I mean, he's just top notch. He's the GOAT, and overall stats wise, I mean, it speaks for itself.
I go to the assists. Let's just say assists for Wayne Gretzky, 1,963 assists. That's more than anyone has points. That is an incredible stat, and that tells you how well that he saw the ice. 92. Go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt you, Mike. I'm just going to throw a stat that stood out to me amongst everything else was his plus minus, a plus 520, plus 520.
And for anyone watching doesn't know what plus minus is, that's basically the amount of goals that are scored on for you and against you while you're on the ice. So if he's plus, that means that many more goals was scored for his team while he was on the ice. And you mentioned, you know, the plus minus, the goals. We all know he had the 92 goals in one season. That's never going to be matched. Especially not in today's NHL. You know, we're never going to see anything like that. He's the point per game leader at 1.92 points per game. Or I'm sorry. Yeah.
That was right. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. 1.92. Yeah. He's got 4 200-point seasons. That is incredible because he's the only person to have 200-point seasons. 61 NHL records. Yeah, he was. 9 Hart trophies. And of course, he led the 1987 Canada Cup team in points. I posted the video of him making the pass to Lemieux for the game-winning goal of that tournament against Russia. So yes, stats-wise, he's through the roof.
Yeah, I mean, just a comparison to Lemieux too. Lemieux finished a plus 115, and I mean, we're talking about, again, debating whether the greatest in the NHL, and he's 400, 400 behind him in that category. It's just amazing when you look at that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So let's look at Mario a little bit here in his stats. Brian, what do you got to say about Mario?
Well, obviously Mario, you know, we all know what he went through. He had the back issues. He had the Hodgkin's disease. He missed a lot of time for that reason. Technically played 17 seasons, but you know, there was a few of those seasons were very abbreviated. So I went and I kind of dove deep, and I wanted to get an idea of what would have happened had Mario not have gone through all that, had he stayed roughly as healthy as Wayne Gretzky throughout that time. So first off, Wayne Gretzky, he played 572 more games than Mario. Mario, he was able to, he was getting 1.8 points per game, 0.75 goals per game. And I figured out a few more averages. So I'm going to bring up this graphic here if I can. Okay. So
We're in the big time. We use notebook paper.
Right. So here's Wayne Gretzky. First off, this is his actual stats. He's got 894. He's first in goals, first in assists with 1963, first in points with 2008-57. Power play goals, he's at 17th, 204. Shorthanded goals, 73, first, and game winning goals, 91. He's 21st. So, and like I said, I did some math and I made some adjusted totals for Mario. Now, these are not Mario's actual totals. These were if he would have kept the same rate and played the same amount of games as Wayne. So now we look at it, and Mario would have been first in goals with 1,119. He would have been second in assists with 1,679. He would have only trailed Wayne by 57 points. He'd have been second all time. He would have been first all time in power play goals by a significant margin. He would have been first in shorthanded goals with 80. And he would have been second in game winning goals with 120. So really, when you look at it, you would have Mario would be first or second in all five of these. I'm sorry, all six of these major categories, and he would surpass Wayne in a few of them here. So, and then Wayne would actually be down 17th to 21st in a couple of them. So we would probably be talking about Mario being the greatest ever without hesitation, had that been the case.
He's the big what if, like we were talking about Ken Griffey Jr. last debate.
Exactly.
Big what if. As far as Mario, so I did a little bit of my own, let's say, adjusting as well. There is a stat out there that actually shows that Lemieux leads in adjusted points per game. And what that is based off of each year that they played, you take the scoring of every player in the league and average that out. And based off of that, Mario actually has a higher points per game average, which was an interesting stat for me to find. The 92-93 season for Mario, statistically speaking, is the greatest season in NHL history. Unfortunately, he did get cancer during that season, so he did miss a chunk of the games, but he was on pace to beat Gretzky's 92 goals, and he was on pace for 215 points. Probably would have had more points, in my opinion, than 215. When he came back from the Hodgkin's lymphoma, he was getting the radiation treatments. This guy scored 45 points in the last 15 games of the season. That's like a 3-point average. That was coming back from, cancer treatments, radiation treatments. Imagine if he's at full health. And even himself said that he was drained. He ended up taking the whole 94 season off because he was just so physically drained, from coming back from that chemo and everything. Everybody knows he caught Pat LaFontaine that year. Mario goes out with cancer. He ends up down like 30 points or whatever. And then he comes back at the end of the year and he ends up winning the scoring title by 15 points. But so statistically speaking, that's the greatest season in NHL history.
And, didn't the Pens go on like a 17-game winning streak when he returned from cancer?
Yep.
Yes.
Yes.
Their first President Trophy.
Yeah, and I think it was the last game in the season against the Rangers. They put in 10 goals, and Mario had 5, got a standing ovation at Madison Square Garden. That's a pretty rare thing. He got a standing ovation in Philadelphia when he came back from the treatment. Philly, they hate everybody. I mean, they throw snowballs at Santa Claus. So, But Brian, you had mentioned something. I think it was you who mentioned it, but with the amount of goals that Mario would have had in what you put on there, I think it's important to point out that Gretzky himself has said that Mario is a better goal scorer. Now, not player overall, not passer, whatever. Gretzky himself has said Mario is a better goal scorer, and that's why he passed him the puck, supposedly, going down on Russia there in the 87 Cup there. So, Brett, you got it, Grant. What do you got to say?
again, you can go back, and I like Brian's detail there, going in and seeing what he would have done throughout his career if he would have been healthy, because it's just true. And again, we talk about the what if, and that's something that will be definitely spoken about in this, debate back and forth. But something I look at too, depending on if we're going to look at stats, is look at who Gretzky was paired with early in his career on the Edmonton Oilers. I mean, you're talking about Hall of Famer after Hall of Famer after Hall of Famer that he was paired up with. You guys, Mark Messier, there,
Curry.
and then Curry, and then you got Grant Fuhr back at goal. So
Coffee.
the team was
Coffee on D with them.
stacked. And Lemieux came into the league and he had no one. I mean, I believe it's his highest point total for a season, the 199. He had no one. He did it all on his own. I mean, basically with not bums, but no one compared to what Edmonton had. And then they finally started putting pieces around him, right?
He did have coffee that season.
I mean, but compared to who Gretzky had to play with, I mean, you're talking about an all-star team versus Lemieux and Coffey. And then you started having the guys like Yager and Ron Francis and Recchi all come in there. And so, I mean, that's another argument on the side for Lemieux, that he did it with much less weapons than what Gretzky had.
And that's something that's always said. But if you actually go back and you look at Gretzky's very first couple years, the Edmonton Oilers weren't good when he got there. And his line mates, I don't even remember their names, like his first 2 seasons, because they were so horrible. Then pretty much from year 3 on, they got pretty good. But Kevin, what's your take on Mario?
Unfortunately,
with all your Penguin stuff in the background.
Yeah, well, Brian and Brett definitely had be touched on a lot of what I was going to talk about. But also, I want to say that competition when Gretzky first came into the league wasn't as what it was, when Lemieux came in as well. It was easier to score back then. I mean, both Lemieux and Gretzky scored 100+ points in their rookie years. You can't take both of them. But I don't know, I agree with Brett. I think his team was actually more stacked. Gretzky had 4 seasons over 100 points before Lemieux even got into the league, and one of them was over 200 points. Actually, 2 seasons were over 200 points, and one was at 196. I mean, 3 seasons at basically averaging 200 points a season. I mean, that competition was pretty shoddy, if you ask me. And that is right there, 600 points of his, 2,800. That brings him down to 2,200 if you take those 3 seasons away. But Lemieux, like Brett said, when he first came into the league, Pittsburgh was on the brink of bankruptcy. They had filed it. They were talking about relocating. There literally was nobody on the team until 89, 90, when players started coming in on trades and whatnot. And Lemieux, later in his career, he battled the health issues. And what he did when he came back from cancer was remarkable. He mentioned that 5-goal game against the Rangers. Let's not forget, he also is the only player to score a goal 5 different ways in one game. Power play, shorthanded, penalty shot, empty net, and full.
Something we'll never see again.
Exactly. Yeah. You're never going to see that again. And I think it was if I'm not mistaken, it was against New Jersey.
Devils. Yep.
Yeah. And New Jersey back then was one of our biggest rivals. I mean, to put that up, against the rival team, that says a lot. But later on in his career, after he retired and came back, we still had Yager, Straka, and Kovalev for those first 2 seasons. But after that, we hit rock bottom. Pittsburgh again was at the bottom end of the totem pole. He suffered more injuries. He got AFib, and only played, I think, 26 games the one season and like 18 the other season.
He had the hip injury in the 26-game season.
So, I mean, later on in his career, even his last 3 seasons, I mean, they really weren't anything that you would be productive at. I mean, our best player was Ryan Malone, who, later was caught with cocaine when he was playing for Brett's team, Lightning. So, I mean, that's our best player at that time. I mean, come on. And Lemieux made his players that were on his line better. He elevated his players. Alexei Morozov was a nobody until he was paired up with Lemieux, and then he was almost as good as Lemieux because Lemieux got him into where he needed to be and fed him the puck. Morozov was an excellent player, and then once Lemieux left and Morozov left to go to KH, you won't hear his name ever again. Lemieux made everybody around him better.
Morozov's career ended when his rookie year in the playoffs, when he hit the post on the penalty shot that lost the game against the Canadiens. So don't give me anything about Morozov. Anyways, Kevin, you did mention the scoring of Gretzky early on. This is something to add to Gretzky's legacy. The Oilers were so good at scoring goals, they created the Gretzky rule. For people who don't know what that is, it's basically offsetting penalties. And what that means is it eliminated 4-on-4, 3-on-3, because too much ice was open when there were less players on the ice for Gretzky and the Oilers to score goals. So they actually call that the Gretzky rule. I thought that was a pretty interesting thing and a nice thing for his legacy. Since we are talking legacies today. So let's, Kevin shaking his head. All right, so that was good with the stats. Let's move on. Let's talk about the after the hockey careers. Kevin, I'm sure you've got some good stuff to say. So why don't you start that out? Start out with Mario, since we started with Gretzky on the last one.
All right. I mean, Mario's done a lot for the city of Pittsburgh. He saved the team twice, when he came to Pittsburgh as a player, and then he bought the team out of bankruptcy and kept them in Pittsburgh. And he's been a successful owner of the Penguins. They've won, 3 Stanley Cups since he's been the owner. He's done so much for the city of Pittsburgh, off like building cancer research centers and medical facilities, and the community. He's just an all-around good guy. I mean, he helped Sidney Crosby, mentored him, let Crosby move into his home to help mentor him and get him where he needed to be, shaped Crosby into the player that he is. And now Crosby's doing the same type of stuff that Lemieux's doing for the city, and he's passing down his legacy to other players that are coming into our system here in Pittsburgh. I can't say enough nice things about the guy. Now, Gretzky, I have some other things to say about Gretzky, but Lemieux all around is a good guy. He's done a lot for the city. He saved the team and the franchise. So I don't really got anything bad to say, and that's not just because I'm from Pittsburgh. I literally don't know of anything bad that I could say about him, other than I know someone might bring up there was one time when he was in Minnesota, allegedly he was in the same room as somebody that potentially got sexually assaulted. If I'm not mistaken.
Let me give you some more details on that, because I love the dirt sheets. And Kevin, check your microphone; it's going in and out. So what that was the Dan Quinn rape case in 1992. It happened in Mario's hotel room. Okay, the woman claimed rape, and it allegedly occurred while Mario and another woman were in the room. They met at a bar. They all went to Mario's room. The woman in bed with Mario claimed she heard the other woman crying and saying no. Quinn and Mario both got court orders stopping release of that police report. Okay. And I just would like to point out too that when Mario was in bed with that other girl, and I just want to say this, Mario is my favorite player of all time, but I like to put all the facts out here. Mario, when he was in bed with that girl, was already dating his soon-to-be wife, who was pregnant with child during that time. I did the math, and the math adds up that she was pregnant with his child while they were dating, while he was in bed with another woman. So
yeah, that was a stat I didn't know.
Hey, I like the dirt sheets.
The dirt.
So yeah, that's the only negative I've ever found on Mario. And you mentioned Mario, what he's doing for Crosby. I would like to throw in there that Gretzky is doing the same for Connor McDavid, and a lot of the young Oilers coming up. But Brett, go ahead. Let's hear what you got to say.
Well, Mario should have talked to Crosby and made him a little tougher. He's a little bit soft on that aspect. Other than that, no, I do have to agree. I think, Mario went from a player that changed a city to he went to an owner and a GM that really changed the city and kept it going. And I mean, Pittsburgh's a dynasty. There's no other way to say it. I don't say I hate Pittsburgh. Obviously, when I'm a hockey fan since I was born, and I grew up watching them, and I loved Mario Lemieux, I loved Gretzky, I loved them all. So I mean, there's no hate there at all. And again, you look, the thing I could say is Gretzky has really struggled after hockey. Not that he doesn't mentor players and do some good things outside, but when it comes to the hockey aspect, because I mean, he tried to become the head coach, didn't last that long, did not go well. He turned into a GM of the Coyotes, and the Coyotes, what have they done? I mean, they missed the playoffs almost every single year. There's struggle there. So, I mean, he hasn't had the same success that Mario has after the player, being into hockey. So that's where I'd have to say a little bit. Again, there's not much other than what you dug up about him. You can say terrible about these two guys. They've kind of kept their stuff together. Hear what Brian has to say on that, though.
Well, yeah, I mean, Mario Lemieux, if you mentioned the name Mario Lemieux in the city of Pittsburgh, I mean, you're going to get a smile. I mean, he's what he's done for that city, for hockey, for hockey in that city is just, it's hard to compare really, to really anyone else, in the sense that that team, there was multiple times when it looked like we seriously were dreading that team was going to leave the city. I mean, seriously, it was very, very real, where I was worried I was going to wake up next day and the team was going to be gone, where it's going to be Kansas City or wherever. And Mario stepped in. I mean, the first time was with his play, really. And then, later it was actually stepping in, with his own money and his management and everything, being able to save that team. And I mean, that's just tremendous. You found a dark side of Mario back when he was in his early 20s. All right, but I just look at this overall contributions to the city, to hockey. I remember, whenever hockey just wasn't that big of a deal yet. And I was still young, but I just remember when it really wasn't that. No, I'm not gonna say nobody cared about it, but there just wasn't that same sort of fever that it was till when Mario showed up and started, when he first got the Penguins into the playoffs, and I believe it was 89.
89.
That was just tremendous. I mean, I remember it all through. The whole city was just buzzing over it. You turn on the radio, for the first time, I cared about the Wales Conference and these things I didn't really have that much interest in beforehand. It was like I was gripped. That's whenever I really became a fan. I was just gripped on, wow, we're gonna got a 7-game series, we're gonna advance through the playoffs, and then when Mario finally led that team to the first Stanley Cup victory over the North Stars. I mean, that was just a tremendous thing. I mean, I remember turning on the news, there was people out in the streets, just making a huge deal about this thing. It was a complete fever that consumed the city, and really none of that would have been possible without Mario at all. And so that's what the city of Pittsburgh owes him, and that's what that's just to reiterate. He put Pittsburgh on the map in the hockey world.
Not to mention, the Penguins still owed him millions of dollars.
That's right. He could have called in on that at any
40
time,
million.
but he didn't do it. So yeah, he's
he used it as equity to buy the team. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
But he could have easily been like, "Give me my money," then we would have been even worse shape.
True. And when he got them out of bankruptcy, he paid every person that worked for the organization, right down to the vendors giving Coke, like full 100% on the dollar. Usually in bankruptcy, you don't do that. You're talking like you get 10% of what you're owed. And that's legal. But he gave everybody every penny. I do give him credit for that. Kevin, since I gave out Mario's dirt, why don't you bring up the dirt sheets for Gretzky? What do you got?
Actually, I was kind of Brett had brought up his failed ownership and GM and coaching. That was one thing I was going to talk about. Absolutely nothing for the Coyotes. And then his family life. His family life.
Here we go.
It's got some issues there. That starting with his daughter and her social media and the pictures and videos that she posts on her Instagram or whatever it was, Twitter, whatever those folks use nowadays. I'm not into any of that stuff, but
Please, you watched every video. We know it.
I was going to say, you're checking out her Instagram, though. Yeah. Okay.
Never.
It was for research, right?
Yeah.
How the hell has got my favorites page?
Look, the gambling ring. Okay, let's just touch base on that a little bit. Do I really think that Gretzky wasn't a part of the gambling? I mean, it's open that he knew about his wife gambling. So whether it was his bets that she was doing for him and he let her take the fall for it, I don't know. But there's recordings of Gretzky trying to cover it up, trying to get his wife out of the lawsuit, out of the investigation or whatever that was going on. They were betting on hockey games, in sporting events. Football, I think, was another one, if I'm not mistaken. If you look at baseball, Pete Rose, he was betting on games and he got, banned for life from the Hall of Fame because of that. Gretzky, I'm sorry. I mean, yeah, he's a great player, but if you're going to do that to a great player in baseball, he wasn't completely innocent in this gambling ring. I'm telling you that right now. He knew all about it and he tried to cover it up.
Well, Rick Taka's the one that went to jail for it.
Yeah, because do you really think that they're going to let Gretzky get in trouble for that and have his legacy tarnished the way it would be tarnished if he had any inkling of a possibility of him gambling and betting on games?
I guess we could say Mario's a nice guy because he hired a felon and talk it after the fact. But Brett, what do you got to say about that?
I mean, again, you really have to dig deep into some of his personal issues, and again, a lot of it could be clickbait because how much do some of these news stories really know about the situations going on? But there's been stuff put out there about his drinking and him having a drinking issue. And then they tie that to the golfer who dated, or I don't think they're dating anymore.
Dustin Johnson, they're married, I think.
Okay. But they tied it to him because he had a drinking problem at one point, and they said it's kind of a family issue. And but I mean, again, this is all outsiders looking into a family situation. But I mean, Kevin pretty much said it. The gambling ring was something that I had heard about in the past, didn't really look much into. So I mean, you're digging real deep to try and tarnish two of the greatest players to ever play a sport in their life. That's kind of where I'm at with it.
Yeah. Brian, since we've been bashing Gretzky here for a little bit, let's go back to Mario. Do you think that Mario was a coach killer and a player killer for that matter?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I mean, he certainly wanted to assert himself on a team. He certainly wanted to be part of the decision making. But the question was always, well, did he earn that? And there's in a lot of ways you could say that he did. He was the team captain. He was, like I said, he was just the man in Pittsburgh. He knew he was responsible for carrying, the entire team and the entire franchise. So it was a difficult thing for him to, accept another coach with different ideas. I think that there was times when he did, but I can understand why he didn't, and I can understand why people do think he's a coach killer as well, because there's a certain sentiment that says, oh, well, he's the coach is in charge, you have to listen to what he says, period. But we've seen that, and I think Lemieux was kind of on the cutting edge of this, but we've seen it in sports over the last couple decades where players have had a lot more influence on coaching decisions than they ever did before. I mean, especially going to the NBA, even the NHL to an extent, and other sports. I mean, where they really seem to have, they want to be part of it. Maybe not controlling everything, but they want to be part of the decision. They want to at least be asked about it, or at least be involved in the thought process. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. Perhaps Lemieux could have gone about it a better way, but I think he was, like I said, at the forefront of sort of this evolution of players being more involved.
Yeah, I believe that he ran the greatest coach in NHL history off Scotty Bowman. You know, brought in Eddie Johnson, who, you know, God love him, but his head wasn't exactly all there after all those pucks to the head he took through his years playing. And everybody knows Mario ran that team after Scotty Bowman left. And then, you know, just players. Everybody knows you hated Zubov. Got Sergei Zubov traded, brought in Kevin Hatcher. Peter Klima, I mean, the guy was an all-star, came to Pittsburgh. Mario didn't like playing with him, gone. So he has had that, I guess we'll say, aura about him in his past. But let's move on to I guess we'll call it the next section or whatever. Who do we feel is like the bigger star? And I'll start this one out. Gretzky. I'm gonna start with Gretzky and his starness. Gretzky was so big that his wedding was put on TV. Yeah, out in Canada, nationwide. You know, he carried the Olympic torch up in Vancouver during the Olympics. The Canadian government tried to block the trade of Wayne Gretzky from the Edmonton Oilers to the Los Angeles Kings. A government got involved to block a trade in a professional sports. And that's why we have the famous quote today when people talk about their teams, oh, they would never trade him. Well, they traded Gretzky. You know, that's the big quote. You know, Gretzky's hosted Saturday Night Live. He was on The Simpsons. He was on The Young and the Restless. Mom, if you're listening, yeah, that's right. Wayne Gretzky was on your show back in the day. Something that to me says star power is money. And I just want to point out that Gretzky out-earned Mario $200 million to $45 million, you know, in the playing career days. So, Brian, what do you think? What's Mario's star shade to you?
Well, I mean, like I mentioned before, you know, Mario, he was Pittsburgh hockey. He was that imprint on it. But when I look at Wayne Gretzky's his stardom is bigger, and that's because he basically took hockey out of the Stone Age. I mean, hockey was a regional sort of thing. It was, you know, it was popular in Canada and in its cities, but in its U.S. cities, but outside of that, it really wasn't. And when Wayne Gretzky, you know, came in and became the star, it became a whole nationwide thing. You know, it really put hockey on the map. And not only did that, you know, he revives the Edmonton franchise. He goes down to Los Angeles. He basically keeps, you know, the interest of California hockey. You know, he makes that a thing. And even, you know, when he goes to the Rangers, you know, he kind of revives that storied franchise. So it's bigger with Gretzky because of, you know, of what he the amount of fans he brought in, more people he touched. And then as far as he was more of a marketable guy too. Mario was sort of soft spoken. He just wasn't really, you know, camera friendly so much. That really wasn't his thing. His personality wasn't there. Whereas Gretzky had more of that. He was more of an outgoing guy. So he's more marketable. I mean, you know, we have the NAS game here, Wayne Gretzky's. I remember when Bo Jackson had his commercial. Wayne Gretzky was the hockey representative on that. The Bo knows hockey. You know, just everything. When you thought of hockey, the first guy that you really thought of was Wayne Gretzky.
Well, and it didn't help with the commercials. Lemieux's first language wasn't English; it was French.
Yeah.
Which it did get him a Snickers commercial where he did it in English and French. But Brett, is Gretzky responsible for that Western expansion?
I mean, yeah, I could definitely say that it is. I agree with all of Brian's points there, talking about the marketability of Gretzky, because, you know, I mean, you look at him, and a thing that stands out too, you're talking about who's the bigger star. Gretzky is the only player in the history of the NHL to have his number retired by all teams, if I'm correct. I mean,
That's correct.
And that makes a lot of teams upset about it too, because they're like, he has nothing to do with but they get it. You can look at normal people around. If you go to a random person on the street and you say, do you know what hockey is? Well, yeah, even if they're not a big fan. I know my wife for one, who do you know? Do you know Mario Lemieux? She's like, who's that? Do you know Wayne Gretzky? Oh yeah, I know him. I mean, it's a name solidified around the world, not necessarily just in hockey world at the time, that everybody knew. It's just because he changed the whole land for hockey. And then if we're talking about stars, I mean, hey, you go and you look at I was checking it out that Twitter, Mario Lemieux has more followers, man, than Gretzky. Gretzky's struggling there in the Twitter aspect. So, hey, we're talking about stars. Social media this day and age is it.
But if we had Gretzky's daughter in, I'm sure they're killing Mario.
Yeah, I don't even want to.
Supposedly her account got deleted or taken down.
Because you've been looking at it too much. I mean, come on. Doing your research.
Whatever.
Evan, what do you got to say on this topic?
Well, I mean, I think Mario Lemieux is kind of at a disadvantage in that aspect because his whole career was in one city. Gretzky played in Canada. He got shipped over to the West. Then he came into the Midwest when he was on St. Louis. Then he went to the Big Apple. I mean, he's been on multiple teams, kind of spread out his name all around.
Major cities, yeah.
Yeah, he got more exposure across, 2 countries, basically. So, I mean, obviously, more people are going to know his name, whereas Lemieux spent his whole career in Pittsburgh. That was it. One team, even when he became the owner, it was of the same team that he played on. He hasn't left the city of Pittsburgh since he got there. But, I mean, you did mention that, Gretzky got some honors up in Canada, but so did Lemieux. In 2009, Lemieux was made a knight by the National Order of Quebec, and he was also made an officer of the Order of Canada in 2010. So, I mean, Lemieux's gotten some honors up in Canada as well, the country that, he came from, just like Gretzky. But I don't know. I just think Lemieux is at a disadvantage because, like I said, he was in one city. So obviously most of his contributions and things that he's going to do is going to be in that one area that he's been in, where he's been passed around and ended up in Arizona as an owner and coach. So, I mean, he even went down south. I feel like Gretzky's had more exposure because he's moved so many times. And his stats, I mean, obviously people are going to know his name because of his stats, but no one's mentioned yet that when Lemieux came into the league, first game, first shift, first shot, first goal after he burned Ray Bourque. Who does that? Who scores on their first game, first shift, first shot and beats Ray Bourque? Like, that's
Hall of Famer defenseman.
Yeah.
Best, probably second best
winner.
defenseman of all time, probably.
And a Stanley Cup winner when he was in Colorado. I mean, for a young kid to come into the league and do that, I feel that's just amazing. That's exciting. You're not going to see that often, where they score on their first shot, first shift, first game. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, Bobby Orr said that he thinks Mario Lemieux was the most talented hockey player he's ever seen. So, I mean, you have some of the greats throwing out those things around there that.
Well, and even Yager has mentioned that he looked up to Lemieux. When he saw Lemieux come over there and play international play, he was starstruck basically, and he looked up to Lemieux. And when he got drafted by Pittsburgh, Lemieux took him under his wing like he did Crosby, and took him in as well. Granted, their relationship got soured a little bit later on when, Lemieux was an owner and tried to bring Yager back, and Yager, gypped us and went to Philly instead when we offered him a contract. So their relationship is strained, but
they've made up.
He just had a recent interview where he still talked good about Lemieux, even after their strained relationship. And Yager is, Brian had mentioned, second in was it points that you said, or behind Gretzky or something? Somebody mentioned it. Yager second.
second
in the league. Player basically saying Lemieux was my role model. I mean, second best player, just under Gretzky, is saying Lemieux is my role model. I mean, come on.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and just one last thing I want to add on the star power. It was last year that the NHL Players Association, they did a poll, and it was, what player would you most like to see play live? And Gretzky was number one with 31.8%. Mario was not even number two. He was number three at 9.2%. So Bobby Orr was above him at 14.9%. So that gives you an idea of what the actual players as a whole might think. Yager's a great player. He played with Mario all those years too, so that's going to bias him a little bit, I feel. But
can I throw something out there real quick?
Yeah.
Is it just me, and I could be wrong, but I feel like Mario Lemieux has scored bigger goals than Gretzky.
That was the next topic that I was going to bring. What is the most memorable moment that for who do you think has the most memorable moment? So Kevin, since you started that, go ahead.
I mean, you had already mentioned earlier in the show that goal for Canada. Yeah, Gretzky assisted it. But that was a huge goal for Canada, winning the gold at that point. But Lemieux, I mean, he was clutch in the playoffs, Stanley Cup Finals for 91-92 for Pittsburgh. I still remember that goal against the North Stars where he came up the center ice, split them, then made Casey look like a fool in net. That goal sticks out so much that
they made a statue of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's an amazing
that was graffitied a few weeks ago, unfortunately.
It was graffitied, unfortunately. But I mean, I just feel like he scored clutch goals, and then if I'm not mistaken, he scored the game winner off of a Larry Murphy shot against Chicago in Game 1 when we came back from down 4-1, I believe it was, going into the third. We came back and beat Chicago with 4 seconds left. I'm pretty sure he scored that game-winning goal. His last goal before retirement, he got the breakaway against Philadelphia on home ice.
That was huge.
You can't write that. I mean, that's like a movie, fantasy thing. Your last game on home ice, you get a breakaway at the end of the game to bury a breakaway against Philadelphia, one of our biggest rivals. And then his first game back, he scores a goal assisted from yours truly, Jaromir Jagr. First game back out of retirement, and he had a goal and 2 assists that game. I mean, those are some of the goals that I remember that were just huge and will stick in my mind forever. And he's had other ones that were amazing, but obviously I want to leave some for the rest of y'all to say.
Brett, go ahead.
It's funny talking about a breakaway. Obviously, I'm going to age myself a little bit here. I wasn't around, or old enough, should I say. I was around, but I wasn't old enough for Gretzky's, if you want to call them prime years of his championships in the mid 80s, late 80s. I hadn't obviously started to watch hockey a ton until I was a tiny bit older. But I will always remember as my love for hockey grew, just watching Lemieux and Jagr work together. Was a huge collector of cards, hockey cards. And I mean, you would go and you were looking for the specific ones. And I'll always remember a goal because I'm a Tampa fan, obviously. And I believe it was Lemieux's final season, or it might have been in the playoffs. I'm trying to remember specifically because I'm pulling this all from memory now. But he was playing Tampa. Game was tied and Lemieux got a breakaway late in the game and he buried the puck. And it was just unreal because I was at the game and I just remember being like, wow, I'm watching one of the greatest players. He just got a breakaway against my team. I should be sad that he just scored, but I'm not because I'm watching greatness in front of me. And that is a memory I literally obviously will carry with me for the rest of my life. It's funny how that sticks out, but that game, I'll never forget that moment because I know it was late in his career. And I'm trying to remember if it was a playoff time or regular season, but it was late in the year and the game was tied and he just buried it on the breakaway. And I mean, that's
Mario had the moments. His whole career was just kind of like moment after moment because of everything that he went through physically. You know, the guy got beat up every night. He didn't have Marty McSorley in his corner like Wayne Gretzky, where if you touched Gretzky, you were pretty much dead. So Mario had so many memorable goals and plays. The thing with Gretzky, he might not have like the huge memorable moments. I mean, obviously when he took the scoring lead of all time, that was a big moment. I think Gretzky is more known for the accomplishments. 50 goals in 39 games. You know, that's, we'll never see that again. 51 game point scoring streak. You know, he had the 3 consecutive 200 point seasons. You know, everything that Gretzky did was done in chunks. You know, his moments were in chunks. And that's like a really stupid word to use. I can't think of a better word at the moment, but Mario's were more individual moments, I feel. Even when you look at Stanley Cups, Mario has 2, so you know that's a little more individual than Gretzky's 4, I think he has. So you know, you got to give Gretzky the love as far as the accomplishments that are never going to be matched, but I do give Mario a big edge on the moment. Brian, what do you think?
Well, I mean, when you think about, especially like breakaways, there were several times that Gretzky, you know, he would get stoned by the goalie, and you know, but with Lemieux, I can only really think of like a couple times when it happened. I mean, when he came down the breakaway, you knew it. You knew he was going to score. I mean, the only one I can really that comes to mind right now was the time whenever Dominic Hasek got him as a rookie against the Blackhawks there in the Stanley Cup. But besides that, it was like I can't even hardly think of any times. He was so money when he came, you know, when he went on a breakaway. Another big moment, because you guys took a lot of the ones I was going to say, but another big moment that sticks out to me, it might be kind of a little under the radar, but going back to the '89 playoffs, the first year that the Penguins were in there when they were starting to get serious again. We went against the Flyers in that series, and that was like a very brutal physical series. And Lemieux just took that game over. I forget which game it was, game 3 or 4, but he just took the game over. He scored 5 times against the Flyers, and Ron Hextall was so mad that he took a stick and broke it against the goal. I mean, Ron Hextall
and
was
he chased Robbie Brown down too.
Right. It was that's right. He went after Rob Brown. That's right. He was just so frustrated mad. And I can't recall many times I've seen a professional athlete just like so broken. And Mario did that to him. You know, and that was just like, that was a key moment that always, you know, stuck with me about Mario Lemieux.
The only other goalie I remember stuffing him, we all have to agree, would be Glenn Healy in 92, 93 playoffs. He
wasn't
stuffed
Lemieux
the entire team.
Wasn't Lemieux the only person or the first person to score off like the face-off too? Like he just whacked it from the face-off circle.
He did that on a challenge. Mark Madden challenged him, said he would donate to charity. Yeah. So, okay. So let's go to our final conclusions. Kevin, I'm gonna come to you first. Let's try and keep it 2 minutes max. Who are you taking? Who has the better legacy? Like we all don't know who you're gonna pick.
It has nothing to do with being from Pittsburgh, okay? But if we're looking at the whole picture, I mean, obviously, if we're going based on stats, by all means, hands down, Wayne Gretzky's the GOAT. Like I said earlier, he's the Tom Brady and Tiger Woods of the NHL. Like, no one's going to get his records, especially nowadays with the way it is, getting points and goals and stuff. You'll never see a 200-point season ever again. Like, that will never, ever happen. And even though it was in the time period of when it was, like, that's still a remarkable feat. And he almost had 3,000 points, like I mentioned earlier in this podcast. So hands down, if we're going with stats, it's Wayne Gretzky. But if we're going legacy, I think Lemieux has done more things off the ice that help contribute to his legacy's proceeding. Gretzky is fizzling out. He hasn't had success really after retirement. Lemieux, like we had mentioned, definitely has had the bigger moments, and he's done it all in one city for one team. He wasn't passed around. So I feel like his legacy is going to live on forever in Pittsburgh, where it belongs. So I'm going with Lemieux for the best legacy.
Brett?
All right. So Kevin touched on great points there. You look, and Lemieux is, again, he played his whole career in Pittsburgh, so that kind of limited him to really being able to reach out and really put his reach into the hockey world in different cities, even though they all knew of him. Where, again, Gretzky played in LA and New York and Edmonton. I mean, you're talking about major cities with some of the largest populations around.
St. Louis.
Yeah,
St.
St.
Louis,
Louis. Yeah, exactly.
Detroit.
No.
But you know what? If we're talking about legacy, I got to look at a couple things. I got to look at, number one, Mario's resilience, what he went through. I know that there's a what if, and we've talked about that regarding legacies, but my goodness, the man came back from cancer, and what he did immediately returning, and it's unheard of almost nowadays with the advancement in medicals, that we've had. And then you look at just the moments, we talked about it, the moments you remember, the big moments that you see, the things that you watch in stressful moments, who carries a team on their back. I look and I think, Mario Lemieux had a gold medal as a player. That's something I meant to mention earlier. Wayne Gretzky didn't as a player. It's, other reasons we could say why that is. But when it comes down to it, hold on, I got to pull a Lee Corso here. We're on game day. So, but we're going to have to go with, I know it's backwards, but.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got it.
That's the old school jersey there, man.
Yep.
Okay. I'm going to go next, and Brian, we'll let you go after me, but you guys made it sound really easy. It's not easy, and I'm not going to pull out a Mario bobblehead, but I've got a couple of them over there. Gosh. So, in my opinion, Mario was the better player. He had the bigger moments. He's probably, maybe other than Gordie Howe, the biggest name in hockey, I think, especially right now. Even though, you got Crosby and Ovechkin, but I think people still think Mario over them. But to me, Gretzky transcends hockey. Gretzky is a name. It's known in Russia. It's known in Ukraine, Czechoslovakia, other places more than just the United States and Canada. Gretzky is bigger than hockey. Mario is hockey. Gretzky's bigger than hockey. His legacy is more known everywhere. And, I mentioned all the things that he's been in entertainment-wise, things that make his legacy bigger, I feel. I do agree with you guys. I think Mario's a better player. I think he had the bigger moments on the ice. He has the cancer coming back from that, and that's all great legacy stuff. But outside of Canada and the United States, I'm not sure that Mario is going to be as known as Gretzky, and I'm looking at a global scale, so I'm giving my vote to Gretzky. Brian, finish us off here. Who are you taking?
I feel like this was like my first kind of idea that I got whenever I approached this discussion was, I feel like this is almost the same kind of conversations we would have with Peyton Manning versus Tom Brady. You've got a guy that I think Mario Lemieux is like Peyton Manning. He's probably the best hockey player, just all around hockey player that maybe there ever was. I think so. And I touched on, what the statistics would have looked like had he not faced the injury, health challenges and whatnot. And I do believe that, that what if would have, if that would have been answered in a positive manner, that he would right now just be universally, everybody would say it. Yeah, he was the greatest ever. But that didn't happen. The more accomplished quarterback is Tom Brady. The more accomplished hockey player was Wayne Gretzky, for all the reasons that you said, Michael, on a worldwide scale. If you just ask the average casual sports fan, who do you know more about, or who do you even know? They're going to know more about Gretzky. And so just more of a household name all the way around. And that's really what it comes down to. If I'm in an all-time draft and I want to take the best player, I'm taking Mario Lemieux. But when we're talking about the best legacy, it's got to be Wayne Gretzky.
Wow. Okay. So we have our first tie in show number 3. That's amazing. So we're going to let all you at home, you can settle it in the comments section. Unfortunately, probably most of our friends are from the Pittsburgh area, so that's not going to help Gretzky's cause any. But I just want to remind everybody that August 6th is the next show. It's going to be the should MLB put the steroid players into the Hall of Fame, and that's going to be a team debate. It's going to be me and Brett versus Kevin and Brian. We've got some steroid guys right behind me right now. And remember that trivia question for a prize. I haven't been on Facebook to see if anybody answered yet. So get your answers up, and if you get all 3 parts of that correct, I'll get a prize mailed out to you. If you've already won a prize, unfortunately, you can't win again. So keep that in mind. So everybody have a good night. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.